Hey G-Fans, GoGFan93 here, and welcome to another Kaiju discussion video. In this video, I will be discussing kind of a compare and contrast of Godzilla 2014 versus the original, Godzilla 1954. Now, this video, before I do anything, this video is not to say or to declare which is a better movie. This is just in my opinion of which movie I think is better, but it's not like a end all be all, this is the video that makes it. No, like, this is just my opinion, okay? And I'm gonna be fair to both films as best I can. I did a lot of detailed work here. I got some notes here, so this is more of an organized video. I'm not just kind of talking off the top of my head, not the hop of my head. Anyways, so without further ado, let's begin. Alright, so with Godzilla 1954 and Godzilla 2014, the reason why I wanted to make this video is because there's a lot of people out there. The biggest thing is, the one that sparked this idea was because of people complaining the fact that Godzilla did not show up a lot in the new 2014 film. But I wanted to make this compare and contrast video to see how well this movie actually followed what the original did. And in my opinion, I think it did a pretty good job in following what the original was. Minor a couple things after looking at it and after watching the movie 3 times. Actually, no, 4 times. I saw it 4 times in theaters. And I've had opinions that have kind of been forming, and just kind of wanted to talk about it again. Alright, so first off, the story. Now, the story with 1954 versus Godzilla 2014, they are similar in the fact that, you know, it's an origin story of Godzilla, but it's also very different actually in the way that both of these two films, you know, do their story. The 1954 Godzilla was created by nuclear bombs. After the bomb droppings on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Godzilla was created by that nuclear radiation. The difference between Godzilla 2014 is that with him, he was already here. With the origin with that is they're saying that Godzilla was there during like the dinosaur times. If you read the Godzilla Awakening comic book, they kind of delve into that. And even the Muto creatures were even there during the dinosaur times too. But because of the radiation in the atmosphere was dissolving, they went underground to get that radiation. And because of the bombings that happened, then they got woken back up and Godzilla came back up and got even more tough. And then we decided to, once the government, the Monarch organization tried to bomb him again in the Pacific, he got even more stronger, and that's why he's really big. So that's basically the origin between these two. A little bit different. Godzilla, 1954 Godzilla, completely created by nuclear bombs. This Godzilla enhanced by nuclear bombs. So, and the 1954 film, the thing that's really different with these films is that when it comes to the story, in my opinion, it's that the 1954 film focuses completely on Godzilla. But in the 2014 film, it's more focused on the Mutos, actually. And the Mutos are the main threat, and it's very different compared to 1954, because this Godzilla, he was the main threat. This one, on the other hand, the humans looked at him as a savior. Even though Godzilla was not meant to be a hero in this movie, the humans looked at him as, yeah, oh my god, he's the hero. But that's not how it's supposed to go. That's just the human interpretation, or humans being ignorant, thinking that, oh, Godzilla's a savior, even though he's not. And when, you know, looking at the story, the cast, you know, the characters that are in the story, there's not really many similarities between the cast from the original film and the new film, because the new film is not a remake of the original film. It's a complete reboot. It doesn't even connect to the original 1954 film. It just has winks and kind of things like that. But what I want to get into is the special effects of both films. Now, 1954, obviously it's not really fair to judge a modern movie with a 60-year-old movie, but you know, I do want to be very, you know, objective about this. And when it comes to special effects, I gotta give it to 2014. Obviously, it looks the best. It's the best looking Godzilla movie out of the whole series. I mean, the special effects were breathtaking. I mean, Godzilla, just the way he moved, the CGI was just amazing. It looked real. There were a lot of parts in the film. They used a lot of practical effects to enhance the CGI. They just did a really good job. But on the other hand, with 1954, that movie also looked really good for the time. I mean, for the time when it came out, to get a guy in a rubber suit to look threatening and all that stuff, it did a really amazing job. The special effects back then were really, really well done. But it has kind of dated, especially when you watch future Godzilla movies. You can kind of see that, they got better with the special effects. So, but it's just kind of those, when you're not looking at it objectively, it's kind of those films that you can't really touch. It's just kind of, that's what it was, and you got to keep it that way because it was a masterpiece. But when you are looking at it objectively without a Godzilla fan beer goggles on, 2014 definitely takes the cake when it deals with special effects. All right, so this is a really big one that I want to talk about with the characters. Now, the cast between both of these films. So I'm going to go down the line of the characters that I kind of paralleled to. Now, these characters are not remakes of these, the characters in 2014 are not the remakes of the characters in 1954, but these are the characters that I kind of had a connection with, or like, the protagonist, and then the supporting whatever. So first off, with the 1954 film, we had Akira Takarada playing as now, these Japanese names I might mess up, so bear with me. Hideto Ogata. So, Ogata was the main character in 1954. Now, in 2014, we got Aaron Taylor Johnson playing as Ford Brody. And when it comes to the acting, I gotta give it to 1954's Ogata or Akira Takarada. He did a way better job than Aaron Taylor Johnson. Now, for me, I liked Aaron. I had no problem with Aaron Taylor Johnson. I thought he did a wonderful job, but he was very one-dimensional. He didn't have a lot of development with him. Ogata did. He wanted to marry, his girlfriend that was in the film, and we'll get to her later. And he was, he seemed to be more involved with a lot of the science that was going on in the film, and just kind of, he wasn't, because Aaron Taylor Johnson, he kind of just went through the motions of of what a main character would go through. He wasn't really, how do I want to say, he wasn't super involved in the planning and what they're going to do. He was kind of involved in the grunt work and just kind of dealing with I got to disarm the bomb and shit like that. And but I'm talking about when it comes to the acting and all that, definitely Akira Takarada gave a better performance. And even to this day, Akira Takarada still has a better performance of a 50s film than Aaron Taylor Johnson did in the 2014 film. I'm not blind. I know that Aaron Taylor Johnson was not the best actor in this film. I don't have a problem with him. He did an adequate job, but definitely looking at both films, Akira Takarada just blew him out of the water. So definitely got to give it to Akira. Now, the next one, here we go. Momoko Kochi, who played as Emiko Yama, which was the love interest of Ogata in the first film, and to parallel with the new film, we have Elizabeth Olsen playing as Ellie Brody. Now, this is a little bit tougher because these two were kind of the supporting actresses, but they still did, both of them I think did a wonderful job. I think, Emiko or, Kochi, she wasn't super involved, but she did have a big part where Dr. Serizawa showed her the experiment, and she kind of had a good plot device where she was the one who told everybody about the oxygen destroyer. So she had a big part in the storyline in trying to defeat Godzilla and stuff. I mean, if it wasn't for her telling everybody, they might not have even used the oxygen destroyer. Now, for Ellie, Elizabeth Olsen in the new film, she didn't do a lot for the story. As much as I was all right with her acting, all she really did was kind of be in the background. She was the wife, she had the son, and she was just kind of there for the main character to have a purpose, to I gotta save the world so that I can protect my wife. She was just kind of that character. She didn't really have a lot for her. She didn't do anything helpful. All she really did was just, she was a nurse and she took care of all the sick people and the hurt people, but that was really all she did. And frankly, she didn't get a lot of character development or screen time, but, if that's all they were going to do with her, I'm kind of glad the screen time we got with her wasn't, she just didn't do much for the film. I'm not saying that's bad. When she was on camera, I think she did a really good job. She portrayed a mother, a wife. I think she did a good job. But once again, I got to give it to the original 1954 with Kochi. She just had a more impactful role in the film by telling everybody about the oxygen destroyer and being kind of a love cock tease to Dr. Serizawa, and that kind of formed a triangle, which we will get to with the next guy. Here we go. Akihiko Hirata, who played as Dr. Serizawa, and then to parallel it, we have Ken Watanabe, I'm sorry if I messed up his name, playing as Dr. Ishiro Serizawa. Now, both of these guys, I think, did a really good job, and although Ken Watanabe could have had a little bit more development and a little bit more screen time, I think his involvement with Godzilla was kind of its own story that could have been more developed. And with Dr. Serizawa in the original film, the character dynamic with him was so intriguing. He was a very dimensional character. I mean, he had kind of a character arc as well. He started out as a scientist in his basement, just doing all these things, and he was a very distraught. Like he had issues that was going on in his mind. He loved the Emiko, but sadly, she was falling with Gata, and this love triangle that was going on between them, and it was very dynamic. It was really cool. And when he showed Emiko the oxygen destroyer and what it could do, and when she showed her the fish and all the fish turned to skeleton, and then she just freaks out, and that scene right there was really cool. And and he doesn't want to use the oxygen destroyer because he knows it's going to be used for the wrong people, that they're going to, or be it used in the wrong hands, and it's going to create even more destruction. And then he ends up using it, but he ends up sacrificing himself with it, along with all of his paperwork plans. He burns it so that no one else can recreate the oxygen destroyer. Now, with Ken Watanabe, on the other hand, he was there as they kind of made him seem like a cuckoo person. Like, he's like, okay, well, this scientist guy, he believes Godzilla's here to bring balance to, basically it's kind of like bring balance to the force kind of thing. It's like Godzilla's the chosen one in the 2014 film, but he didn't have that much screen time, and he didn't have that much involvement in the movie. He was just kind of there, and the general guy just kind of, Admiral Stans, I think was his name, he just kind of walked all over him. I mean, he is just, he said, we're going to use the nukes on these monsters, and Watanabe's character was just like, please don't use these nukes, it's not good, and because, don't you guys even remember World War II with the Hiroshima and Nagasaki? And they're like, well, we got to use it. And he, like I said, he didn't have an impact. The same thing with the other characters in this 2014 film. I just feel like the characters in the 1954, or not, I think I got them mixed up. The characters in the 2014 film didn't have impact. They didn't really do things to, like, I don't know how to explain it, but the 1954 characters, all of them had their parts and their roles, and they did them really well, with Dr. Serizawa using the oxygen destroyer, but Ken Watanabe just kind of sat there and just said, let them fight, and just, let's see what happens. So next, we're going to talk about Takashi. So first, before I move on, I'll give it back to the 1954 film. Once again, Dr. Serizawa is the more superior character than 2014's Dr. Serizawa. All right, so Takashi Shimura, who was played as, Kioi Yamane Hakase. I'm so sorry if I butchered the name. I'm trying really hard to read all these. So he was kind of like the scientist guy, the biologist guy, and he was the one who went to the site in the village to get the radiation to figure out, what this was. And he found out that it was this thing called Godzilla, and he was, telling all the press about it, and, he was created by nuclear bombs and all this stuff, and that there's really no way to kill him. But what he wanted to do is that he wanted to study Godzilla. The military wanted to kill him and stuff like that, and it kind of depressed him. He wanted, like, the scene where his daughter, which is Emiko, she goes into his office and he's just staring out into the window, and he's so sad because everyone wants to have this creature be killed, but he wants to study it. And I think it's a really cool dynamic with that character. Now, on the flip side, at least the character that I paralleled or kind of had, like, they had somewhat similarity, it might be weird, was Bryan Cranston's character being as Joe Brody. Now, Bryan Cranston was, he was the character who, he saw that something was going on, no one believed him, and he said, these signs are not natural disasters, something is going on here, they're hiding something. And he had a tragic, backstory. His wife got killed in the nuclear power plant really quickly, and that really, ticked him off, and it just turns him into this obsessed, I gotta figure out the truth, I gotta figure out what they're doing, and it ends up, killing him at the end. Spoiler alert. Where he finally figures out, oh, there's the Muto creature, and then he dies. Now, what's interesting is that the doctor or the biologist scientist or whatever in 1954, he saw Godzilla with his very own eyes, and he lived throughout the whole film, and he fulfilled his role. Bryan Cranston, on the other hand, he got to see Muto once, a glimpse, and then he dies. And he never got to see Godzilla. So Bryan Cranston's character didn't even know about this. And that's the thing that kind of, now that I've seen the film 4 times, I still think it's a wonderful film, but I think there was a missed opportunity to get Bryan Cranston's character with Ken Watanabe's character and them meet up, and they both talk about what to do with Godzilla and Muto, and they try and figure out how they can survive this whole thing. So those are the characters of the films. So, and with Bryan Cranston compared, this time I will give it to Bryan Cranston with 2014. His character, I think, did a better job than the 1954 scientist guy. I mean, he still did a great job. He was still a wonderful character, but Bryan Cranston's acting was just, he was in it. He was in the role, and he was really good. And I'm not even really going to talk about the other characters that were in the film. The assistant in 2014, that was the assistant of Dr. Serizawa, she didn't really do much. And I'm not really going to talk about 1954 with Raymond Burr's character playing as Steve Martin, because in the American re-edit, he just kind of stood there and narrated the whole thing. It just kind of ruined the film. So I'm not, those two characters, they weren't anything. So overall, when it comes to the characters of both films, I gotta give it to the 1954 film for being the superior film with at least with characters, because all those characters just had more of a purpose. So, and some of them just had better acting and more character development than the 2014 film. But not to give away anything, because I still think the cast of 2014 did a good job. So that's that. All right. So the other thing that's the biggest thing, I think, is Godzilla himself. Which is better? Now this is where I'm probably going to get shot in the face, and I don't know. We'll have to, this is a really tough decision, and I can't really decide which two I think is better. Now, I mean, you can look at it, and I think actually what I have here, this is the Jakks Pacific figure, and this is an X Plus figure, but I actually think this might be the accurate size. Godzilla 2014 is way bigger than the 1954 film in scale. And when it comes to power, I gotta say 2014. I think if Godzilla 1954 had to fight Godzilla 2014, I feel that the new legendary Goji would myrtleize the original Godzilla. But I know that a lot of the old fans out there are gonna hate me for saying that, but I'm just looking at this objectively, and I think 2014 is a better Godzilla just because of how animalistic he is and more realistic he is and how they portrayed him. But the one thing that I'll take away from him and give to the 1954 film is that the 1954 Godzilla was more destructive. That was actually one thing that was really weird about the 2014 film. It seems like Godzilla the legendary Goji, didn't do a lot of damage. He went under the bridges, he kind of walked past buildings, he didn't do a lot of damage. The original Godzilla, on the other hand, man, he fucked shit up. He blew up stuff, he blew up cars, he blew up buildings. I mean, he used his breath on everything. I mean, it was pretty big. So I guess when it comes to, I'll split it into two categories, because I just cannot, both of these Godzillas are so cool, and I cannot really pick one out of the other. It's kind of like picking your children, like which one's your favorite. You just can't do it. But I think when it comes to destructibility, the original Godzilla did a good job. But when it comes to power and force and just overall, I guess, strength, I would give it to 2014. So, I mean, they're both really good, so whatever. Okay, so the last thing that I want to talk about, which is probably the biggest thing, and the whole reason why I wanted to make this discussion video, is the monster screen time of Godzilla. Only Godzilla, not really including the Muto in the 2014. I'm talking about just Godzilla and the screen time he got. Now, I tried to do some research to figure this out before I did this, and I couldn't get a really solid evidence of how, like, the exact screen time of each monster. So I heard for 1954, he got 17 minutes of screen time, but I also got some information from Facebook and all that stuff that it was 12 minutes, or it was a little bit over 12 minutes. So I'm not really sure on that. So and then with the 2014 guy, he got, I think people are saying, around 13 minutes of screen time. So you know, it seems like the 1954 Godzilla had a little bit more screen time than 2014. But overall, I mean, the 1954 film was it was an hour and 36-minute film. And then Godzilla didn't even appear, it was halfway through the film, then he appeared. And it was a lot of suspense when you finally saw him when he popped his head over the hill. But in 2014, we have a doubled time. This is a 2-hour and 3-minute film. So that's why a lot of people are ticked, because it's a longer film, so they thought that Godzilla would be in it more. But my counter argument is that Godzilla had just enough screen time to get you to like him and to get you to want more, because I want more. But you did get more monster time in the new film because of the Muto creatures. The Mutos gave you that double time because the Mutos had a lot of screen time in the film. To close this whole argument, I want to just, you know, say, like, I'm just getting so annoyed with people talking about, you know, Godzilla's like, oh my god, he was barely in the film and it's just bullshit, and you know, but you got to remember the suspense, and you got to remember that, you know, because they put Godzilla, you know, barely in the film, it makes you want more. And I have a feeling the sequel, when they come out with the sequel, Godzilla's gonna be in it more. I have a feeling like that. And, you know, also for the people who continue to compare this film to Pacific Rim, stop it. I'm so sick and tired of people comparing it to Pacific Rim. What? Just because Pacific Rim came out before this film? That's a bullshit argument. Do you know why? Because then why don't you say Cloverfield is a ripoff of Pacific Rim is a ripoff of Cloverfield? Because Cloverfield came out before Pacific Rim. They're both kaiju films, but they're completely different. Okay, same thing for King Kong back in 2005. Peter Jackson's movie. Have you guys forgotten about that film? That film came out, that was 2005. So you want to say that Cloverfield is a ripoff of King Kong 2005, and then Pacific Rim owes everything to King Kong in 2005. But then you can even go further back and you say 1933 with King Kong. I mean, that was like one of the oldest monster movies. Or Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which was the whole inspiration for Godzilla. Sorry, this is my like small little rant part. So I'm just so sick and tired of people comparing it. These are different films, okay? King Kong was more of an action thriller kind of, I mean, the first half of the movie was more like a horror thriller, and then it turned into an action horror, and that was a 3-hour movie. May I remind you, King Kong in a 3-hour movie didn't appear till half the film. Yes, he had more screen time, but he didn't appear for half it was a long time till we saw King Kong. Another thing is, Cloverfield was more of a horror kaiju film because of the whole camera shaky cam thing and just the way that they did the film. It was sort of an action film, but I looked at it more as a horror film. Pacific Rim was more of an action popcorn, fun, campy, little cheesy, Japanese homage to all the Gundam and robot movies out there. And then Godzilla 2014 was more of the suspense thriller kaiju films. So stop comparing these films because it's such a bullshit argument. You can't say Pacific Rim is a better film than 2014 because that's just stupid. They're different films. Yes, the similarities that they're kaiju films. That's the only similarity with it. But I can tell you that if Godzilla had to fight a Jaeger, Godzilla would kick their ass. Okay? So, that's my little rant. Sorry about that. Alright, so to close this discussion, the film that I think is the superior, it's really tough, but I will have to go with 1954 because the original Godzilla, not because it was the original, not because it's the nostalgic, not because I'm a Godzilla fan for so long, it's just because of what's in the film. It's a more whole film. Godzilla 2014 had a lot of things that were going for it, and now that I've seen it 4 times, I still think it's a wonderful film, but it does have a lot of things that I wish they could have fixed. It's still an amazing film, it's still a great Godzilla entry, but for the people out there that you guys got so excited for this film, and when it came out, and the people who were complaining about it, you guys were the ones who probably expected so much. When I went into the theaters, I did not expect a single thing from 2014, and that's probably why I was alright with it, because my expectations were so low. But Godzilla 1954, it just had a better story, more focus on Godzilla, better characters, and the effects for the time were really good, and that's more of a whole film. 2014, it had an alright story, a little bit little bit less focused on Godzilla and more on the Mutos, and the characters were all right. Bryan Cranston was obviously the best one, and the special effects were the best, but you know, that's really all I can say. So, and there goes my dogs. But I will say 1954 is the superior film. Not because it's the original, but it's just because it's superior. I'm sorry. That's my opinion. If you guys differ from it, that's completely fine. And my dogs are continuing to bark. It's ridiculous. I'm sorry. But yeah, so that is my opinion. And if you guys differ from it, that's completely fine. I would love to know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know. And yeah, that's it. So thank you guys so much for watching this Kaiju discussion video. Oh, this was probably the longest one, but I just really wanted to get this one out because, you know, a lot of people are still complaining about this film, and I'm like, you know, you got to look at it, you got to compare these two films, and because I've compared them, I have a more appreciation for 2014, because it followed a lot of the good things about 1954, but it still had some things that it could have done better, but, oh well, it's what we got, and that's it, and hey, it made a lot of money, so at least Godzilla's popular again, and that's what I really wanted this film to do. So that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay big, G fans.